Okay, second one then. So if we are trying to use SE16N, but we're finding it quite hard because we don't actually have all the information we want, like maybe we want to see the amount and the dates in the same table, which is obvious one, right? If you're doing a financial document, you want to see the date and you want to see the amount, and you can't do that with SE16 because you got the date in BKBF and you got the amount in BSEG. So what you would maybe rather do is, if you want to look at one particular document, is to check that document. All right, so when you're doing an FB03, here we have a dashboard from Glick, and it's basically a dashboard that says, if you have like a document that's in a different fiscal period to the posting date is different fiscal period to the document date. And this is a really typical test that we would do on this graph here. It's a very typical graph that we would do for audit testing. And we want to see basically, are people like cheating with the dates? And maybe they want to put like something in the wrong fiscal period because they want to change how much cost they've got in a period. So if that's the case, then we would see that on our dashboard, and we'd have a dashboard like this. And this will enable us to be able to identify the documents, like the journal entries that we actually want to check. So when we look at this dashboard, and then we can pick out, and we want to look up the company code, the fiscal year, and the document number. So, and we actually show you how do you actually run an FB03, and you'll see that you need the fiscal year, you need the company code, and you need the document number. And the reason for that is because SAP actually changes the document number every year, and each company code has different document numbers. So we need those three things. And when we're doing a dashboard, we always put those three things at the beginning of the table so we can quickly look it up. All right, so we have dashboards for like looking up or for finding strange journal entries. And last time, I think it was the first webinar we did, we had like the top 10 fraud data analytics. And in there we had a dashboard about journal entries. And it's like all about trying to find unusual journal entries because they're very high amount, they're manual and they're really rare and they've got strange accounting scheme. We flag them as something that we want to look at because it's odd. And so we'd get that document number, the company code, the fiscal year, and the document number. And then we go into FB03, we look it up. And in FB03, basically we're looking for any kind of sign-off or supporting documentation that we can see in there, something that we might not be able to see if we are just in our dashboard. Like sometimes we don't see everything in our dashboard. So in FB03, and like with all the other SAP transaction, well, a lot of the other SAP transaction codes, we have a little hat, and the hat basically means like the header information. So in the header information, you can see what kind of transaction was used. So here we can see it's BKBF and who actually entered that transaction. And this can be useful for, you know, if you want to check if that person is actually supposed to enter those kind of transactions. All right, and then if we want to see if there have been any changes to the document, or if we want to see if there are any attachments, or if we want to see if, like, you know, what's the relationship between our financial document and maybe something else, such as like the MM module, if there's been a supplier invoice before, or it could be a billing document, it could be in the SD module. Then when we're inside FB03, there's a menu at the top, and the menu at the top basically says environment. And under environment, you've got the document changes. So you can straight away see if there has been a particular release or something like that, or someone's changed something about the document. And then you can see attachments as well. So you want to check for attachments, like particularly if you've got a dashboard like the one that we saw in the first webinar that we did, where you've got all the journal entries and you can see, you know, which journal entries are strange, which ones have got like a really high value, that kind of thing. And if it's having a big impact on the balance sheet, you want to be able to check that documentation. You want to be able to see, did somebody actually sign something, sign a contract or sign a document to say that this is normal or not? So you might find that in attachments if your company has the habit of like actually uploading attachments into SAP. And then you have something really useful as a relationship browser, as I was saying before. So if your financial document is something that's linked to something else in another module, then you'll see that in the relationship browser. And you can also go to documents in accounting, and you can see what it's cleared to, if it's actually cleared to something, which means that if it's an invoice and it's matched to a payment. Okay, so here you can also see you know, what's the reference number? So for example, if you've got a reference number field there and you're not sure what it means, then you might want to check that out. And here, just checking it out. So I'm clicking on the little, it's like a spanner and a hammer. And it tells me down here that the reference number that I'm seeing on the screen, this is XBRN, which means like external document number, which actually could be configured maybe for different things depending on your SAP system. Okay, so then we can also check the individual lines of our document. We want to check whether or not they've been cleared. So if we click on one of the lines and we want to check if it's been cleared, when we double click on the line, we get this pop-up box for the line. And if it's been cleared, then we'll actually see the clearing document number in this box. So here you can see there is no clearing document number at all in this box. Okay, so it means it has not actually been cleared. So clearing basically means like matched to something else. If it's an invoice, gets cleared to a payment and vice versa. It's basically the main thing that we're talking about with clearing. But it could also be like you have an accrual and you book your accrual and then you want to clear your accrual to the reversal when you actually finished with your accrual, and then you should normally clear it. So these things get matched. It's just a number to sort of stick them together. Okay, so in FB03, we have been able to see, you know, why our exception has appeared, doesn't have any approbation. So we had a really strange document, you know, it's in a different period to the document date. It looks strange. We can see it's manually entered because it's from BKBF, which is there's like the reference key, which means it pretty much means that it's manual. We also saw the transaction code that shows it's manual. It doesn't have any approbation because it didn't have any change documents. It doesn't have any supporting documentation, and it was of a high amount. Okay, so therefore, it's maybe something that we want to look at. Okay, but we did see that it's only one, like when I was actually doing this, if you look at this in more detail after, you can see that actually in the example, there's only one general ledger account that actually gets impacted. So it's probably just something about reallocation around closing, and it's probably not something that we want to look at. So this can also be something, it's like, maybe you see a document and you look at it on dashboard like, wow, I've got this really strange document. What's it doing there? And it's a huge amount and everything. But then when you go into SAP and you see, oh, but all the lines for that document are actually only touching the same general ledger account. And then you're like, so what? You know, it doesn't actually, we don't want to waste our time with it. So that can also be the conclusion when you're doing these things. It's like you want to be able to say, actually, I don't care about that one. Let's just get rid of it. So if we choose a different example, we want to choose a high value journal entry, and we're going to choose one that doesn't have a description and appears to be a link to the MM is materials management module, because the document number starts with 51. So a quick tip, if you're not that familiar with it, if the document number starts with 51, pretty much it's going to be something that's coming from materials management module. And we could also have a look at this one. So these are invoices without descriptions. So you choose a really high value, doesn't have a description. Might be that in your group, you know, like invoices that should have descriptions on them. So you might want to quickly check that out. So we go into FB03, we look it up, we got the fiscal year, the company code and the document number, and we can look it up and we can see, and we can click on the invoice line and we can see whether or not it's a clearing document. So here, what we've done is we clicked on this invoice line, and now you can see the actual pop-up box is a bit different, right? So sometimes this drives you absolutely mad, because like in the last example that I was showing, you could be looking around for the clearing document number field, and you can look around for it forever, and it's just not there. And the reason it's not there is because they only put it there when it exists, and when it doesn't exist, they don't just put it there as being blank, which is completely mad, but that's just the way they do it. So if it is here, when you double click on the line, then you know it's been cleared. And if there's nothing about clearing, then it basically hasn't been cleared. So this is something that we can actually check to see the clearing document. All right, and this time, if we go to document environment, because this is a document that is linked to something in materials management, because it has an invoice that was entered before materials management, then we can see in the document environment that we do actually have some entries this time, and we can see straight away the document number that is entered in the materials management before it actually gets into the finance module. Okay, so we can also go to environment, and as before, and this time more exciting because we see that we got some changes. So exactly the same as before, but before when I showed you there's like nothing happening, but here you got some changes. You got some changes to the payment method, and the payment method is going from the old value of T to the new value of C. And you might be thinking, what does that mean? So this is where you might want to go into SE16N, do a quick SE16N on the payment text table. If you don't know what it is, you can quickly look it up in Google, and you can see what is the meaning of C, what is the meaning of T, and here you can see that it's going from a transfer to check. So it means now we're going to pay them in check. All right, so if we go back to our transaction, you might be thinking, all right, we want to know who it was that cleared it, because we've got an invoice that's entered, and often we just want to double check, like, did the same person that entered it also do the payment? Because now we know, we changed it from a transfer to a check, so maybe you want to see if there's something funny going on there, and it's more likely to have something funny going on there if the person who did the invoice entry is the same as the one that actually did the clearing. So what we do is we click on a line entry, and we go in the line entry, we go and have a look at the document number, and the document number here is, we're going to look for the clearing document. The clearing document is the one that we saw on the previous slide, and when we look up the clearing document, we can see who it is that actually cleared the document, and actually we see that it's not the same person, so there's no issue with that. All right, and then we can think, all right, but okay, let's have a look at the supplier, because we did actually change it from transfer to check, is a high value, and there isn't any description of what the invoice is about. So we could also like check out the supplier. So if you want to do that, you could double click on the supplier. And if you double click on the supplier, you don't even have to go out of this transaction. It just takes you straight into display vendor, which is another one of our really key transaction codes. And when you get in there, you can have a look at display vendor, and you can see, typical things we want to look at is, do they have tax information? Do they have like lots of changes to their bank information? Here we can see they don't actually have bank information. That's probably why I had to pay them in check. And you can check out, if they got an address, they got a telephone number, when were they created, who created them, that kind of thing. All right, and then when we go back, we can also click on some of the lines for goods receipt and invoice receipt. And we can check out those ones as well. So if you click on a different line, you will get different information. So if I click on the line about goods receipt, invoice receipt, and then I will see the purchasing document number in here that's related to this.